The following program is brought to you by Podcast One Sportsnet. Don't forget to download our new Podcast One app.
College football excitement is huge this weekend, and all the action is only at one place, betonline.ag. Use promo code PODCAST1 for your 50% sign-up bonus. Here is our own Steve Austin chatting with betonline.ag bookie expert Dave Mason, breaking down the biggest matchup of the weekend.
Let's move on to Texas A&M versus Mississippi State. What you guys are getting on that?
Yeah, this is so far this is the biggest sweat of the weekend so far. Man. Yeah. I mean, this is like one of those games too that I was just talking about. You know, a ranked team playing on the road. Mississippi State opened -4. They're now giving -2.5. So the public just loves those ranked teams getting points versus unranked teams. I mean, you see that scenario. We're gonna need that unranked team all day long, 100 out of 100 times, and there's no difference here. 92% of the early bettors are on A&M, and also the Aggies have been. You know, if you bet the Aggies this year, you're rich. They're 6-1 against the spread this season, so we're going to be huge Mississippi State fans this weekend.
You heard it here. Don't miss out on this action. Right now, go to betonline.ag and use promo code PODCAST1 for a 50% sign-up bonus. College football intensity is heating up. Go to betonline.ag.
October is the greatest time of the year in sports. The NFL, college football, baseball playoffs, and now hockey and basketball seasons. It's all happening. If you're looking for a place to make an online wager, then head on over to betonline.ag. Use the promo code PODCAST1 to receive a 50% sign-up bonus today. BetOnline.ag, your online sportsbooks experts and the exclusive partner of Podcast One Sportsnet.
He's defeated every champion from every organization the sport of mixed martial arts has ever seen, and retired from the octagon as the biggest draw and the industry's highest paid athlete of all time. And now Chael Sonnen's on PodcastOne.com. And for that, you're welcome.
What's happening, guys? Happy Wednesday, and thank you for joining another special episode of You're Welcome. All right, so the World Championships for Freestyle Wrestling have concluded. The women's are still ongoing. The Greco is yet to get underway. But for the Freestyle men's team, Freestyle men's wrestling as a whole is done. It is said that this was the best team that the United States of America has ever put forward. I personally agree with that statement. What's interesting is we are the defending world champions. This year's team got second. I'm still telling you this is the best team that we've ever had. How does that work? And you do the math. Listen, whole nother discussion, but I think this is the best team we've ever had. I mean, let's just start right from the beginning. So Joe Colon isn't even on the team. He ends up second at the trials to Nashon Garrett. And that really means next to nothing to me, to really, I feel like it should to anybody. And the reason for that, you just got to go wrestle the tournament, right? It's such a process. You get to this world meet, and we as a wrestling community have all just agreed that one time a year we'll figure it out, and whatever happens on that specific day, we'll let ride throughout history, which no other form of combat does, right? If you are a world champion fighter, anytime you get into the ring, that world title is on the line. In wrestling, you can beat 5 world champions and never become a world champion, right? Wrestling has just elected to make it as hard as you possibly can on the young men and women who have set their lives aside to sacrifice, to go out and try to win a medal for their country. They've done everything they can do to make it a very limited opportunity, but in the process, boy, it sure does add some esteem, doesn't it? I mean, it really does add for something very special, as long as these are the rules that everybody agrees to follow, and they have. So Joe Colon doesn't make the team. He loses to Nashon Garrett. But the reason that isn't totally relevant is it's just a tournament. As long as you can go in there and get in the top 3, you're going to get a medal. I mean, I can think back to 2000. I think of the year. It was 2001 when Chael Sonnen made the team and didn't go to the World Championships. So Brandon Agam did, and Brandon Agam jumped himself right into the finals and brought home a world medal. The point I'm trying to make for you is those guys that are at that level, whether you're 1, 2, or 3 from some of the top countries, the U.S. being the defending world champions, if you're anywhere in that mix on any given day, you can be 1, 2, or 3 in the whole world. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on any given day. And this is exactly what Cologne had to do. I've been hearing about Joe Colon since, he was wrestling in college. And I used to watch him at UNI, University of Northern Iowa. I used to watch him there. But when he was coming out and he ended up third in the country, everyone was talking about him. Both styles are talking about how tough he was because there was a big calling from the freestyle community that wanted him to go into Greco. They specifically wanted him to go into Greco because of his heart and his toughness and the way that he wrestled. And he never even heard it. He's like, I'm a freestyle guy. I'm just saying at that point in my life, I was merely a fan. And I was hearing about this guy because he was one of the top collegiate guys who wanted to be a top freestyle guy who the top Greco people were saying, hey, come over here and wrestle for us. So this guy was just a name that I was hearing thrown around everywhere. And now we know why. A guy that doesn't make the team, but he stays focused. He continues through camp. He continues to keep his weight under control. He continues to go to competitions. He gets a call at the last minute. He steps on the mat. And he wins every single match but one. Look at Thomas Gilman. I thought Gilman wrestled really well. I don't fully know what happened in the semifinals there. It seemed like a bit of a snowball effect, but we throw that one out. He regroups. He comes out there. I thought that match for third, if he wrestled that a few times, was going to go any which way. And he was actually one of the guys that I felt bad for. I really felt bad because Gilman goes out there and it was all heart and it was all grit and it was all toughness and just everything. I really thought he did everything right. I really did think he did everything right. And sometimes in this sport you do, but 2 + 2 isn't 4. You can do everything right in this sport and not get the result that you want. And I really felt like that happened to him in this situation. You look at Logan Stieber. You have a world champion. And guys, I could talk about this to you until I am blue in the face for you parents who've got these big dreams and aspirations for your kids. It is important that you find the right sport. It is important that you expose your child to a whole lot of activities and let them choose what they're passionate about and let them align their skill sets. Don't just push them into something. Once you achieve that, and Logan Stieber has definitely found the right sport, but once you achieve that, there is one more step, which is you must find the right weight class. And that is very hard to do in the sport of wrestling, where they have cannibalized the sport, taken away weight classes, changed the weight classes. Now all of a sudden they've thrown in a couple of more weight classes, but they're only going to do that these 3 years. And then in Olympic year, look, it's been a little bit tough. And I'm not turning on the sport of wrestling. I'm just sharing with you with the reality that jammed up Logan, okay? When Logan is at the right weight class, you can look back 2 years ago, totally different weight class, but the right weight class, world champion. And frankly, nobody was even that close. I want to say he won in the finals 8-3, if I remember. I mean, there was nobody even close to him. He's going to win. He'd tech fall his way through tournaments. He's now had to adjust for the new weight classes. He wants to be an Olympic champion. He's had to choose an Olympic weight. And it's been hard. And it frustrates me as a fan because I'm watching a guy move for move and skill for skill and heart for heart and talent for talent, and he's having an uphill battle because he's been stuck in between weights. And I know what his long-term goal is. I know he's looking at it with his coaches and going, look, I'm a younger guy. I've got until Tokyo in 2020. I'm going to adjust to 145.5 pounds. But what do you do in the meanwhile? And I'm watching him go out on the mat, and I'm watching who is clearly the better wrestler, him. I'm watching who's in better shape and who's got more grit and who's in position more, and it's him. But I'm also watching a smaller guy struggling with stronger opponents. So, not for nothing, but it was a damn hard draw to come right out of the gate and have Russia too. But in case you guys missed it, that's what happened with Stieber. So, move up to 70 kilograms and James Green. James ended up going 1-1. He ended up going 1-1. And Shane Sparks was on the call with Andy Rovod, and Shane Sparks was very animated with James Green's performance. Shane Sparks nailed it. James Green, for whatever reason, just didn't get going. He just didn't get that offense going. And if you guys remember a year ago, it was the opening round, Jaden Cox never got his offense going. Squeaked through that match, goes into number 2 and gets beat, and then all of a sudden he comes out like a guy lit on fire and nobody can even touch him. That's just a real thing, and I just offer you that example because it's a very real thing, and you don't want it to happen in one of the biggest athletic performances of your life on national TV with commentators in the world watching. But I did feel that happened with James Green. I've just seen him wrestle so many times, and I've seen him wrestle so much differently, with so much more urgency. And in his second match, he was still very competitive. James Green's best wrestlers in the world, any which way you want to do it. But the World Championships, when there's a couple of rounds and 3 minutes per round, you've got to have more points than the other guy. And I just felt like he didn't give himself an opportunity to win by bringing some of his skills. James Green is all over you. I mean, he's on guys like white on rice, and he was just a little bit more passive, and it didn't look like he was fatigued. It just looked as though for some reason he just wasn't changing elevation and getting to the legs. Move up, you take a look at Jordan Burroughs. Jordan Burroughs, amongst the best wrestlers alive, amongst the best wrestlers to have ever lived. And he gets in a dust-up, and he's out there. He's got a tough match right out of the gate with Iran. He gets it done. And, Jordan Burroughs is the most scouted wrestler in the world. And these guys are learning how to wrestle him. And none of them, or at least very few of them, are coming out with a strategy and a goal set to beat him. They're coming out with strategies and goals to keep it close. If I can shut down 3 or 4 of his takedowns, maybe I can only lose by 2 or 3 points. And that's a big success. But it creates a very frustrating match to have to watch for Jordan, because there's guys out there just trying to stop him from scoring. But he ran into that with Iran in the very first match. The reason I bring that up is now all of a sudden Jordan Burroughs is in dogfights, and when you're talking about tournaments, when you're talking about him having to put 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 matches together, the harder the first match is, means how hard the second match is going to be, and then the third and the fourth, when you start adding these up. So when you get these guys that are grabbing underhooks and grabbing collar ties and they're holding position, they don't want to open up and they don't want to wrestle, they don't want to have to breathe hard, and they know Jordan's going to bring that out of him, and they just shut him down. It's just making him have to work so hard. So he goes into match number 2. He drives Iran first. He goes right into Russia. So the top 3 teams on planet Earth in one bracket are going to have to figure this out in the first hour of wrestling. Okay, fine. It's the way it goes. I'm just setting the stage for you. I'm not offering an excuse, but he comes out against Russia. Everything's going well. There's 8 seconds left when they go out of bounds, and JB is up by 1. Okay? The best wrestler alive, let alone the best wrestler that God ever made, is going to hold a 1.8 second advantage over anybody at any time, and he would, except this one. So they come back to the middle, and we all know at home, okay, Jordan's on to the next round. It looked as though Jordan also thought, okay, I'm on to the next round. Ooh, the Russian sidesteps to the left. He comes back to the right. He's on this high crotch. And this is like the new high crotch. Guys aren't grabbing positions anymore and firing. They're all the really slick ones are making it look like a duck under. Even Kyle Dake does some of this. They make it look like a duck under. They come to this but instead of ducking the guy, they come into this high crotch position. So this is where the Russian gets. And Jordan didn't really respond. And now there's 5 seconds left. And the guy starts to turn the corner and start to come up. And all of a sudden, Jordan realizes, I'm going to have to defend this position. The clock isn't going to save me. So he does. But you can see this. I could see what Jordan was thinking from my living room at home when he went to turn that position. All of a sudden, the Russian comes up on a single and just starts driving him towards the out of bounds. And as the seconds are ticking off the clock, Jordan's taking a step. 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second. There was 1/10 of 1 second on the clock when he stepped out of bounds. That ties the score up on a push-up 5-5. Criteria goes to the Russian. Jordan Burroughs is now in the wrestleback. So the one thing, and you have to understand this, there was 2 matches, the biggest matches that the UWW could possibly put on in the entire year, on the entire face of the planet, was Kyle Schneider versus Sajilov, and Jordan Burroughs versus Turismo. When Jordan gets beat, he's got to come through the wrestlebacks. On the other side of the bracket, Turismo gets beat. I can't say it. Frank gets beat. Turismo? Frank gets beat. So now they got to wrestle for third. So the second biggest match that you can put on in all of wrestling is going to happen. It's just going to happen for the bronze. And they go out, and this was a dogfight of dogfights. If you could watch one match of the World Championships, I would encourage you. It is not an opening round. It is not a semifinal round. It is not a gold medal round. It is Burroughs versus Frank for the bronze. This is what wrestling's all about. And when those guys wrestle, it is such an incredible display of technique and of athleticism, but it also comes down to absolute heart and grit. And I've never seen Burroughs lose to Frank, but I've never seen Frank lose to Burroughs either. I've just seen time run out. I've just seen one guy have more points when time runs out. Neither one of these guys quits. Neither one of these guys backed down. It was absolutely the best match. The best match. The number one you must go and watch match. But Burroughs Burroughs grabbed the bronze, which was very, very important and very incredible for the country. You move up to Kyle Dake outscored the world 37-0. There was one guy in the world that can beat Kyle Dake from where I'm sitting. For me as a fan, the one guy that I'm worried about when I'm watching Kyle Dake is the Russian. The Russian did beat Dake at the Urigan. Dake threw this guy every which way but loose. This guy put pressure on Dake. Dake throws him all through the air, takes him down. This guy gets dirty and headbutts him. The referees called it, give Dake a point. I mean, everywhere you turn around, Dake's scoring points. Finally, the Russian goes for a Hail Mary, and Dake grabs him, says, I don't think so. Chucks him right over the top, and they're done 11-0. Dake moves into the finals, had a hard time scoring on the guy, but good strategy in wrestling. Just don't let the guy score on me. Dake beats him 2-0, makes it a total combined score of the tournament of 37-0, and he leaves with his first world championship. You move up to David Taylor, and when you're talking about David Taylor, it's the same thoughts that went against Logan Stever, the exact same thoughts that went against it, which is it's important to find the right weight class. David Taylor has finally found the right weight class. He comes out in the very opening match against the defending world and Olympic champion from Iran. And this is just a toughness issue. And as much as I respect that guy, and he is very tough, and I'm talking about the Iranian, I respect him and he's tough and I don't question him at all. He is not as tough as David Taylor. And it was a toughness issue. Technique-wise, sure, he had it. Size issue, yeah, you bet. Strength, the whole bit. When it comes down to tough, who is going to push when the other one's not? David Taylor just simply had the cardio on him, and he broke him for the second time. Ran through that tournament, grabbed a gold medal, showed excitement when he won the gold medal, which for me as a fan was a very cool thing. I want to see a guy that's happy. I want to see a guy that lets us know it's what he wanted, and that's what David Taylor did. World champion. A world champion, but also overall the best wrestler in the world. When the year comes to an end, if you have to give an award to somebody for who out-wrestled everybody else, who is the master of sport, who did the 2018 season belong to, worldwide, not just in the nation, worldwide, the answer is David Taylor. Undefeated and taking out world and Olympic champions. So he's beaten 3 Olympic champions this year. 2 are the same guy. Well, you beat the same guy twice, but he also beat the 2012 Olympic champion from Azerbaijan. Truly the best wrestler overall that we saw in 2018. Move up to Jaden Cox. Jaden Cox is a force at any weight he goes, but at 92 kilograms, you know, when he comes out and he's ready to wrestle and he's moving his feet and he stays in position, he stays focused. Jaden Cox also has a mean side to him. He's got some real toughness that he shows on the mat. Whereas if you meet him off the mat, he's such a nice and pleasant guy. But you can see it in his eyes. There is a fire in his eyes. Whatever has happened to him in his life, whatever private things they are that create some kind of an animal, he's got it within him and he knows when to bring it out. And you can see that when he wrestles. It's going to be you or me, and every time it's going to be you when something has to give. And you're taking on Jaden Cox. He just wrestled so well. And he never let up. He never had any mental breaks out there. He was focused and prepared, physically and mentally, and he did what we all knew he was capable of doing, which is simply win a world championship. You move up to Kyle Schneider, and the biggest match that wrestling wanted to put on, they planned this whole event around one match, which is Sadulayev versus Schneider, and it was a rematch of last year's Worlds, same weight class, same everything, and Russia as a country weighed in on this one. They swore they would have victory. They swore that Kyle Schneider wouldn't score a single point. And we all put our lives on hold for a moment to go and watch this match. It was a tremendously big deal. And it was one of those situations where we just never got started. The Russian tank came out. He fires a shot. He dumps him to the side. Schneider goes to chest lock him. Russian catches the elbow, tips him upside down. And I'll tell you, it was a little bit tough for me. And there was certainly a score there. Possibly 2-2 had Schneider come out of that scramble, possibly a takedown, and then 2-2, so 4-2 against Schneider if he came out of the scramble. But there seems to be, as soon as Schneider went to his back, I knew they were calling him pinned. I've watched that match 8 times. There was never a point in time where Kyle Schneider's both of his shoulders hit the mat. But I just knew, and it just goes that way at the World Championships, and it goes that way particularly when you're taking on the Russians. And don't forget, I'm not a journalist, I'm a fan, so I have the right to have sour grapes, and I do have sour grapes over it. I do. I have seen so many guys in so many positions, particularly when they're taking on the Russian athletes, Schneider gets called pinned in this case. I could go back to the day before. Russian's wrestling somebody. There's 4 seconds left on the clock. Russian's down by 1. Ref calls a caution and 1 out of nowhere and for no reason. And nobody even protested. Just hands a point to the Russian with 4 seconds left, which hands the match, which hands the bronze medal to the Russian. They do this stuff all the time, and nobody even calls for corruption. I'm not calling for corruption. I think it was probably just straight up incompetence. Either way, if his shoulders didn't touch the mat, but you want to call it a pin, yeah, man, that's going to piss some people off. And it surprises me more than anything that it doesn't piss more people off. If you can't understand the biggest point of wrestling, which is to put the other guy's shoulders on the mat, if you can't understand that concept and you can't seem to see when a guy's shoulders touch the mat, when they do or when they don't, to miss a pin or call a pin when it's not there, it's a level of incompetence that's beyond frustrating. And I'm not crying sour grapes over the match. I get it that it was probably going to be 4-2 for the other guy, and he got to his... whatever you want to do with that. One has nothing to do with the other. If the shoulders didn't touch the mat, and you got 3 referees that are supposed to be the best in the world are calling it for a fault, and this doesn't piss somebody off, I'm the only guy telling you that Kyle Schneider's shoulders did not touch the mat? That's frustrating for me. Where's the support, and where do you think we're going to get any changes for that? A Russian the day before is losing with 4 seconds, and a mystery point just comes up? Just a mystery point. Nobody has any idea what this point is. And you get these 2 other imbeciles? Oh, let's give them a point. Nobody complains. No corner Brit comes in. Oh, what is that, a judgment call? Maybe you can't even... Because everybody gets the deal, man. It's the World Championships. These referees are either corrupt or incompetent, and we're not going to speak up, it was against the Russian, and they're all a bunch of gangsters, so let's not do anything because they might kick our ass in the back. That's the way it's been for years. Nobody's going to say anything. Kyle Schneider's shoulders were not down. That's what happened, but he was called pinned. You form your own opinion from there. When you go into heavyweight, I really liked heavyweight. So Gwiz ended up 3rd. I have no sour grapes about this. I think if you redo that tournament and you redo that bracket any which way you want to do, Gwiz ends up in the top 3. I think the Turk had an interesting run, but you could put him on Gwiz's. Any way you want to do it, Gwiz is going to find himself to a gold, a silver, or a bronze. He is a top 3 guy in the world. He is the 3rd best guy in the world on a bad day. He's a silver to a gold on a great day. That's just the way that it goes. And he ended up 3rd, and he wrestled his ass off. He had to take out a junior world champion in there. The match that he lost was a big surprise. I thought that Gwiz wrestled really well, but I don't have, again, I'm not upset about it, man. The guy grabbed him, he threw him, they scored. I thought that it was very appropriate. You know, I really felt for some of our guys, and quite frankly for other countries' guys too, when the right guy doesn't get the medal. God, I know how hard that can be. Oh, they worked so hard, they did everything right, they got all the way here. And something happened. You might even be able to say that, with the Frank and Jordan situation, to say that Frank wasn't a bronze medalist if he ended up on the other side. Yeah, I think certainly he would have been. So sometimes those brackets can get you. I'm so convinced, and I follow that heavyweight class very close. You do that bracket any way you want, anytime you want to do it. Gwiz's top 3. He got his 3rd. I went to bed easy on that one. But, as a whole on Team USA, I want to say great job. I want to thank you guys for the medals. I know everybody likes to hang their head when they get 2nd. Not here. We are celebrating this. This was a fantastic team and a fantastic journey. Points can play out the way the points play out, and we can live with the result. But as far as the effort goes, great job, fellas.
You're listening to You're Welcome with Chael Sonnen.
Alexa isn't the only one with breaking news. Make sure to hang around at the end of this podcast for the latest breaking headlines on the AP News Minute.
Hey, you guys, it's Natalie Eva Marie, and I am so excited. I have a brand new show on Podcast One called The Natalie Eva Marie Show, co-hosting with my husband, Jonathan Coyle.
Handsome husband, babe.
And you guys might know me from WWE, Total Divas, my fashion line, NEM Fashion.
And you guys might know me from the CrossFit world and the fitness community. I'm really, really pumped for this show. We get to interview the kings and queens of their respective fields. I'm talking celebrities, athletes, activists, people that are top of the line in business. I'm really, really excited.
Anything that you guys want to hear about, we're going to talk about, including whatever guests you guys want us to have on. You will be included 100%.
Oh, absolutely. We want this to be very, very interactive. You guys tell us who you want to bring on, and we'll bring them on.
That's right. right. So you guys make sure to download new episodes of the Natalie Eva Marie Show every Wednesday on Apple Podcasts, Podcast One, and the Podcast One app. And make sure to rate and review.
And rate and review 5 stars.
That's right. Take us to the top, baby.
Anything less than 5 will not be accepted.
If you're looking for the absolute best gear when it comes to competing, training, and recovery, Under Armour has created the best performing gear you will ever wear. Right now, they've got 2 collections. The Vanish collection is engineered to be more breathable, so you're going to feel lighter and less distracted. Perpetual collection is a little bit more dynamic. It offers a unique design and details to help improve the way your body moves. And right now, you can download Under Armour's My Map Run, which you can sync with other devices like Garmin, Apple Watch, or even one of Under Armour's connected running shoes. Download Under Armour's Map My Run and MyFitnessPal in the Apple App Store or on Google Play Store and take control of your goals today.
Now, back to Your Welcome with Chael Sonnen.
You know, there was some, Conor McGregor came out, and I found this to be pretty interesting. Conor McGregor comes out, and he gives a breakdown of his fight. And he did this on some kind of social media, but he went round by round. And I thought it was interesting. You know, anytime you have a big fight, you never know if you have a big fight until after the fact. You know, you guys will remember, but we thought that coming into 2018, the biggest fight that we were going to see, and what would go down as one of the biggest fights in history, was Stipe versus Cormier. And no part of me telling you that wasn't a big fight is my attempt to throw stones. I was with you guys. I thought that was going to be the biggest fight. For my height of anticipation as a fan, no, that wasn't number one. But boy, it was up there. It was up there. We got short-term memories as fans, but I'm telling you, I remember looking forward to that from the day they announced it and why that fight fizzled out. And the point I'm trying to make to you is a big fight you only know after the fact, okay? It doesn't mean it's a big competitive fight. It doesn't mean it's a highly anticipated fight. A big fight is reserved for one definition. How many people watched it? That's it. Whether it was a big fight or not. It could be Spinks versus Tyson in 1989 that ended in 93 seconds. That was the biggest boxing fight of all time. So it doesn't come down to a competitiveness in nature at all. It just purely comes down to how many people watched. The reason I bring up Stipe and Cormier is for reasons unknown and unexpectedly, nobody wanted to watch that fight. Shockingly. I could begin to guess what those reasons were, but I personally just wasn't part of that. I was excited for it. I went there live. I don't regret any of it. I thought it was a meaningful fight. I think it will be an even more meaningful fight as history goes on. However, the second that fight was done, nobody's talking about it. That is just merely a sign and adds to the point that I am trying to illustrate for you guys that a big fight is only something that can be recognized and categorized after the fact. So when you look at Conor and Khabib, and you look at the fact that this fight was a meaningful amount of time ago, 3 weeks ago, a month ago, we're still talking about it. Conor McGregor is coming out and putting out his own interpretation of round 1, 2, 3, and 4. So the point that I'm making for you is the fact that Conor and Khabib was a meaningful amount of time ago. I mean, in MMA, that was light years ago. I just got out of the ring. I got out of the ring forever ago. Okay, I mean, that's just the way that it happens. But when you look at Conor and Khabib and the fact that Conor could put out his interpretation of rounds 1 through 4, which was the extent of the contest, and this can still be headline news, that isn't some compliment to Conor. It's not even a compliment to Khabib. It's a compliment to them both of Conor and Khabib as they went out and they did fantastic business together. But it gets a little bit more interesting. So first off, when Conor gave his insight into this, and he did break it down round by round, and I'm going to give you this in conjunction. I'm going to blur a couple of stories. But Conor's coach, Coach John Kavanaugh, went on Joe Rogan's podcast 2 days after the fight. So I'm combining a little bit of what Kavanaugh had said to Rogan, but also what Conor had put into print. I'm doing that because that's how my mind is working on this. I saw the interview, I read the interview, but it's a combination. And of course, when you've got the student and the coach here, I think that it's fair that we express their opinions together. But I will fully admit that I'm blurring these lines just a touch. But between the two of them, Kavanaugh had come out on Joe Rogan's show and said essentially that they trained to lose. And he broke that down, and I appreciated that he had said that. And those weren't his words, but I appreciated that he eventually came to that conclusion, because as I heard it, I couldn't believe what he was saying. And what he said was, we believed if Khabib took us down, we believed in the grappling department. Our job was to stay on our feet, but we conceded that we probably weren't going to get up. If we failed at keeping the fight standing, we were probably going to be stuck underneath Khabib based on the evidence that we've seen of both Conor's skill set and Khabib's ability to stay on top. So if Conor is to get taken down, go to guard, pull nice and tight, don't let Khabib get separation, and eat up the round and concede that entire round. You guys see why that is a very dangerous mindset. And I can tell you as fighters, there are parts of that we all do. There's parts of it where you go, okay, if I get taken down, I'm simply not going to get an armbar on this guy. So throw armbar out. Don't waste any time in practice on the armbar. Don't waste any time in the fight on the armbar. That triangle choke isn't going to be there. You know what? I'm not going to get leg locks. There's things about this where you don't want to waste time and energy in the preparation into it, but then also within the strategies of the match. What surprised me is when Coach Kavanaugh, who's fantastic at game plans, and I don't mean to second guess him, he has just said this, and it surprised me. When he said we just conceded the entire position and we're ready to throw rounds away, because as I'm looking at that, I'm going, wait a minute, Khabib's 5 takedowns away from winning this fight then. If all he has to do is get you there and you're going to stay there, unless you got put there in the last 30 seconds of a fight, you were going to lose the entire round. So I thought that was very interesting. When Conor weighed in on it, he kind of said the same thing. And it was open to interpretation if Conor was throwing a coach under the bus or not. I don't know that I thought that he went that far, as much as, look, these guys handled strategy, and here's what the strategy was, and then I handle the actual competition itself, and here's my end of it. So I saw some talk online, is why I guess why I wanted to clarify that. I don't know that I agree that Conor threw any coaches under the bus. I think it was more of a team effort. Well, here's what part of the team was doing, and here's what the other part of the team, myself, was doing, and I thought he was okay on that. I thought he was just being candid. But one thing when a fighter comes out and speaks very candidly, I don't see them get a whole lot of credit for it. I think that it's very refreshing, particularly when you have a performer, particularly when you have a character like Conor. I don't think you get a whole lot of those real moments. And why he would choose to go to that platform, I have no idea, but I don't think it matters. I don't know why we couldn't just sit back and enjoy it. And as I read it, he was being very introspective. He was being very objective. I took it as a very candid moment. I don't think there was any PR stunt to this. I don't think anybody edited. I think he was up late one night having some thoughts. I've been there a million times myself, and he decided to start typing them out. I thought it was a really interesting piece. If you guys haven't seen it, I would encourage you to go see it. But some other stuff that's come up, and the fact that we could even be talking about this fight, the fact that we're even talking about this fight 3 and 4 weeks after the fact just speaks to the magnitude. And there's really nothing there to credit or copy, or if you're a young fighter to go back and steal so that you can have one of those fights. It's not really a situation like that. It's more of something that just happens organically after the fact, and there seems to be continual talking points. But one of the tremendous signs, and I never like being worked. I don't like being the worker. I like being the worker. I like everybody else to be the mark. But one way you know when you are getting worked, or one thing that has to send your feathers up, is if the guy has a cash out at the end of it. If a guy begins to lure you into something where he's then going to go and hit the cash register. Conor did just the opposite. Whereas he also said, in conjunction with this piece where he broke down round by round, but in the last number of days, he's come out and said, no, I don't have to fight Khabib next. It could be somebody else. It could be Tony. It could be an up-and-comer. Khabib and I can do it down the road. Now, I didn't know where he was going with that, which leads me to the conclusion he wasn't going anywhere with it. He was just being an honest guy saying, maybe I got knocked off my perch and maybe a title fight isn't my next fight. I got a whole bunch of money and a whole bunch of fame and a whole bunch of run, but if I got to go be a contender like everybody else to get my feet wet and get back in there and get the opportunity I want, then I'm willing to take it. And I thought it was one of the cooler things that he said. I just want to make sure that he gets credit for it, but this was my interpretation of it. There was no way to cash in on breaking down or throwing a coach under the bus, which I think is a misinterpretation and misrepresentation, but it still creates a little bit of dialogue over pizza with the boys. When he's doing that, but then he doesn't have his finger on the scale, and he openly says, yeah, I can be another competitor. I thought it was a very great moment. I thought it was a very organic week. I thought that it was appropriate. I think it also helps to diffuse the power that Khabib has. And don't forget, in this situation, that's the one thing that Conor lost. He lost control of the power. And even though he was the biggest star, and even though he was the highest paid, and even though he would have the most influence because of those two aforementioned things, When you have an opponent who does not care about the money and he's in prize fighting, and that's what you have with Khabib, all of a sudden logic goes out the window. What you could logically do, and we would logically expect other fighters to respond to, which is the money and the payday and the rematch. When you have a guy like Khabib that says, I don't care about any of them, you can keep the money. In fact, I might just leave the sport right now. When the guy says it, but you happen to believe him, he now just took the power. In any situation, whoever can care less, and I'm not saying to be careless, I'm saying to care less, then the other guy has the power. Connor's never been in that spot before. So what is Connor supposed to do when he says, I want a rematch? And for the last 5 years, anybody's name that comes out of his mouth ends up on the other side of that contract, ends up standing across the ring from him, ends up having a great moment and a great experience in a high-profile fight and a big payday, and we are in a business here. What do you do when that guy says, I don't care? And you believe him. To say I don't care is one thing. When the guy says, I don't care, and you believe him, what do you do? The answer is you do what Connor did, and you say, then I'll fight someone else. If you don't care, I really don't care. And while you're sitting in front of a commission, I'm going to be building up a pay-per-view. That was exactly the way you handled that. That was the only way to handle that. And that does not take back the driver's side of the car from Khabib. But it helped to level it a little bit. And if Khabib is not going to play ball, and I haven't got the foggiest idea, guys, as if he is or not. I'm just speaking to how you handle this piece of psychology. If Khabib was not going to play ball, and you're Conor McGregor, you take your ball to another field, and you see whose lights are going to shine brighter. The field I'm over at, or the field that in the corner that you've put yourself in. You don't know that answer until you get there. But when you're confronted with a situation where a guy doesn't want to do business the way that business has been traditionally done, you have to try something different. And that's what Conor did. And even if Conor wants to go into the rematch with Khabib, even if he wants to go into a boxing match with somebody else, even if he wants to sit on his ass and do Ireland, in Ireland, when a guy is coming in and he's starting to take control of that car that is your car, you've got to get his name out of the headlines. When two people are in a headline, one person is getting the shine. That's it. There's never been a tag team that was equal. There's never been an NBA team that was equal. There's never been a football team. One guy gets the endorsements. One guy goes on the cover of the Wheaties box. Not all of the Patriots go on the Wheaties box. One guy gets the MVP. So if you were the guy in the spotlight, which Conor McGregor is, and somebody else is starting to dim that light because he's not logically playing ball, the very least thing that you would give him is a bump. You will get him out of the headline by getting his name away from yours. I don't know that Conor McGregor has the forethought to do that as well thought out as I just said it for you, but I will tell you, even if it was unintentionally, that's what happened here. And if you want to see a big fight with Khabib, if it's not Conor next to it, there are other options. You bet there are. Tony Ferguson can go into that mix any which way he wants, but it's not the same thing. You could take Khabib and a dance partner of his choice, put him any night, any numbers, any box office, any way you want to do it against Conor McGregor and an opponent of his choice, and you're going to find out who the A-side is. Rockhold pulls out. Rockhold gets hurt. I don't know what happened there. If that news out, I just haven't heard, other than an injury. Rockhold had to pull out against the fight with Weidman, and I was so looking forward to that fight. And I always thought on the MSG card, I always thought there was a misplacement as soon as I heard that card. I thought, man, there's your main event, or there's your co-main event. Move the Poirier and Diaz to your main event. This card is done. Always thought that, but I always thought that the Rockhold and Weidman fight was getting under-respected. I felt like it's the first time they fought that fight was disrespected. I thought that was the fight of the year. I've never heard anybody else say that, what I just said, that was the best fight of the year. I don't even think it was a candidate that was up for fight of the year at the MMA Awards. But that's how much I liked that contest. And so when they finally got it all worked out, and they finally got their rematch going to be done. I was pretty excited for it. So, okay, Rockhold pulls out. Well, guess who steps in? Jacare. I love when this happens in MMA. And we've been seeing this a lot lately, but where one fight, a big fight, a fight you're looking forward to, a lot of times the main event, ends up, something happens, it gets disrupted. The fight that you end up making, so many times the parity of the roster and of the weight classes and the divisions right now, the fight that you end up making ends up being a bigger fight than the first one. I don't know if that's the case here, but it may be only because when you're talking about parity, and there's something to be said for that, and I will fully admit there's also something to be said for rematches, but there's something to be said for seeing these two guys finally fight. And how many times has Jacare just not gotten the opportunity? I mean, been this close, but he misses it. This is another fine example. Jacare fighting Chris Weidman is a world title fight. It just happens that the world title's not on the line because Jacare is fighting him at the wrong time. If Jacare could have fought him when Chris Weidman had the strap, if he gets his hand raised, he also leaves over the world championship. So that's kind of some of just the politics of the sport. But if you look at that fight, you look at their ages, you look at where those guys are at, these guys have got to fight. These guys were supposed to fight years ago. You could have made the case for it. So the fact that we're going to see it now, even on short notice and even as a second thought, in many ways, and as much as I wanted to see the Luke and Weidman fight, and still do, in many ways this is a better fight. In many ways this is a more interesting fight. And in many ways, we've waited longer to see this fight. Selfish as we want to be, at least we did see Chris and Luke in there at one point. We haven't got to see this fight. And I just think stylistically that you've got some really interesting stuff here. Jacare, who's a huge ground guy, but much like Damian Maia, does some of his finest work from the top. I don't think he's very likely to get on top of Chris Weidman. So I just think you have a style matchup there that could be interesting. Does Weidman want to go hit that single and drag Jacare down to the mat? Get him off the feet? I don't know. Maybe. That's one place to put him, but now you're going to have some pretty hard work going right there. Maybe you want to stay on your feet for a little bit first. See if you can feel that out. See if you can find that range. Well, then that turns into a lot of fun, too. Weidman does some really good work on his feet. Very hard to hit. As a defensive fighter, he's fantastic. Offensively, Jacare is a little bit more plotty, but boy, he's got that power. And he's mean about it, and he's coming forward, and he mixes things up well. He'll throw those shots, but he'll change elevation and go into a double. If the double doesn't work, he comes back to the shots. He mixes it up a little bit well. When you look at them as athletes, when you see somebody being a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more fluid, a little bit more movement like Chris Weidman, you see somebody a little bit more plotty, a little more rough like Jacare, it always ends up making for a really compelling match. And it seems to be who can get the other one where they want it. I think you would be making a mistake, strategically speaking, if you were Chris Weidman and you thought you got to control that. I think Weidman is a better wrestler, but I don't know if he's better by enough that he gets to control it when it comes down to Jacare cutting his opponents off, putting their back against the fence and dropping down to that double. I just think that both guys are going to have to fight in every position, in every moment, in every round of this contest. October means one thing in sports: excitement, football, NCAA, and now Major League Baseball playoffs. Every pitch, every swing, every play is important. And if that's not enough, we also have hockey and basketball in full swing. If you're looking for a place to make that online wager, don't sweat it, because our friends at betonline.ag have got you covered. BetOnline.ag is an exclusive partner of Podcast One Sportsnet, and they are our go-to guys for online gaming. Speaking of Podcast One Sportsnet, we are in the middle of the Podcast One Sportsnet Challenge, and I've moved up one spot in the rankings. Adam Carolla and all the other geeks, you'd better watch your back, because old Chael is right behind you. This week, I'm counting on some victories from the Patriots over the Bills, the Chiefs over the Broncos, and I like the Saints over the Vikings. Get in on the action. Head over to betonline.ag. Take advantage of the best bonuses in the business, and when you're there, use the promo code PODCAST1. That's PODCASTONE, and you will receive a 50% sign-up bonus today. One more time. Go to betonline.ag, use the promo code PODCAST1, and start winning with your online sportsbook experts. So the gift that keeps on giving, that's known as John Jones's battle with USADA. Boy, and this one may not go away anytime soon. This is just going to be a really tough spot because of the way that John handled this. From a PR perspective, the way that John handled it, there's no way to say it, guys. The cover-up is worse than the crime every single time. If you ever confess to a crime, crime goes away. You get a punishment and at least gets to go away. There's something about human nature that when the person who did the crime continues to deny the crime, we continue to remind them that we know you did. This is the way John chose to play it, so he's just going to have to do it the long route. And he can outrun this thing eventually. I mean, he's failed other drug tests, and he's outrun them. It just would seem to me that one of the goals of PR be to shorten that up and get it behind you as quickly as you can. I think that time is coming. But I don't believe that time is going to come until John quits talking about it. So John came out and he just said, USADA science has proved I was innocent. I haven't the foggiest idea what that could mean. I don't have any idea. Other than it means the exact opposite. It was actually the science of USADA that said John failed the test. So I don't really know what to do when you're in John's spot. I can't give him a fantastic piece of advice. It's a little bit too late to kind of unwind this. And we've seen from Marion Jones to Lance Armstrong try to do it. I just offer those names because you would know. They try to do it after the fact. And it's like, yeah, but your chance to have integrity with me is when you got sworn in under oath or when you walked in front of the cameras and made the initial statement. To try to run it back now is, what do you do if you're in John's spot? What do you do when every media member, and the media is to blame as well. I mean, those guys really are scumbags about it. John has said his piece as far as these failed drug tests go, right? He's failed a bunch. Why are they still asking about the Coke bust? Well, it was too long ago. Okay, well, why didn't you ask me about the first time I failed a drug test? It was a long time ago. Okay, well, why do you keep asking me about this one? That's still a long time ago. I served a whole suspension. I worked my way through it. I went before a commission. I dealt with USADA, and now I have a world title fight coming up. I mean, at some point, John is going to have to call them on it because the media is not going to stop. They are going to keep asking him things, and he's going to keep being confronted with the wrong answer. That's the one thing about the truth, guys. You never have to remember it. But when you're out there playing this game, this wordsmanship game, and this game of chicken, with whatever this possibly means, that the science proved that I was innocent, it's the science that got you jammed up in the first place. So whenever you're playing this game and you're going to keep on stepping in landmines, you're not ready for it, you think this interview is going to be about a world title fight, eventually he's going to be cut weight, he's going to be stressed, he's going to be working on, all the media guy is thinking is, I'm about to grab John Jones. And I know this guy has a history of saying really stupid stuff. So I'm going to turn the camera on and I'm going to mic him and I'm going to get him. And John's brain's over here. He's not thinking about it at all. And he sits down. At some point, he has got to stop. As annoying as it may be, he needs to say, next question. Or when they ask him a question about USADA, he can respond with, I'm fighting Gustafson at the end of the year. He does not have to answer their questions. He is not under subpoena. He is not under oath. And he is not intelligent enough to play this game. I don't concede you, the media guys are very smart. I meet a lot of those guys. Those guys are a bunch of dum-dums, but they're better at this than John, apparently. He has got to stop. John, listen, you outran the other drug busts. That should tell you that there is time. On your cocaine bust, the one you outran the absolute fastest, what was the difference? You came out and told everybody, yeah, I did some cocaine. As soon as you found out it wasn't against the rules and you weren't going to lose any money, you came out and said, I did it. You're in the same spot here. It's too late. I'm not saying come out and say you did it. You've already dug your own. But at some point, you got to stop. The interviewer's got to stop. You want to go out and do this, you try to make a deal ahead of time with the interviewer, hey, don't ask me about this. He's going to double cross you. The second he turns the camera on and mics you up, he's going to ask you about it. But he's only asking you about it because you're so bad at answering it. Coming out and saying the science of USADA is what cleared my name. It's the science of USADA that tested your blood that found the steroid in it. So the level of ignorance with the statement, and you may have somewhere else you want to go with that. Right? John may have somewhere else he wants to go in 5 other dimensions, but your time is only this long. And at some point in this little limited piece of time, you're going to want to talk about a world title fight that you have coming up, which is the whole reason you agreed to the interview in the first place. So at some point, stop answering the question. or get the question and respond with the answer that you want. Or call the interviewer out and go, you're a real scumbag. You're a real scumbag for asking me that. That may sound confrontational to you more than you want to do it. It's how Mike Tyson handled it. Mike Tyson got out of jail, and every interview in the world wanted to ask him about stuff that happened 4 or 5 years ago, and he'd already paid a pittance for. Mike Tyson would finally just call him out and go, you're a real scumbag. You had me on here. Nobody watches your show. Everybody knows who I am. Nobody knows who you are. They're watching this show right now because of me, not because of you, and now you're trying to get a headline off of me. Do you have anything that you like? It was very confrontational, and this is how we did it, but believe me, they stopped. And that's the spot that John's in right now. It's a total mess. And he can't outrun it. He definitely cannot. He's already outrun 2 busts. He can outrun the 3rd one. But he's not going to outrun it when he continually comes up with these ridiculous things out of his mouth. John is not smart enough to play this game, so just don't. Everybody thought Socrates was so smart, and Socrates famously said, I am only smarter than you all because I know that I'm not. John, it is time to know that you aren't. Change the topic. So, Tito and Chuck, this date and fight are getting closer to closer, and I want to be less and less of a dick about this. I really do. I don't want to treat this fight as some kind of a joke. I just don't want to do that. But boy, I got to force myself sometimes not to. It's a tough one. The whole card is tough. They finally announced the card. I read it. I haven't the foggiest idea who's fighting that night. And I know Gleason Tabao is on there, and I know Kendall Grove is on there, and I will fully admit to you that it's a whole bunch of studs. Whole bunch of studs that have worked hard and sacrificed and are getting their opportunity. I wish them nothing but the best. I'm just coming to you from a perspective that when we have a new show, this card has been surprising. And when I tell you I don't know who's on the card, I don't mean that from a condescending standpoint to say that anything is less with those guys' skills than the people whose names I would recognize. The reason I point that out for you is there's not a lot of notable names that are free agents right now. And the notable names who are free agents that we had rumored that were going to be picked up or signed by Golden Boy and put on this card just ended up not happening. So as I say, I don't know who's on this card. I do want to clarify that. I know enough to know there are a bunch of really hard-working, really talented people that got an opportunity and they're going to go out there and take it. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. To share with you that I, from a business standpoint, am very skeptical about where this is going to go or how serious Oscar even is in this space. There's some red flags there. Boy, I mean, I called this out. I was getting ready to fight Fedor. I called this out with the media, and I said, look, literally, this was me. I won't get credit for it. I'll give myself credit for it right now. I told Mark Raimondi, if Oscar De La Hoya does not come out with a press release stating who is on this card within the next 6 days, I guarantee you that card is not going to happen. 4 days later, he put out his card. But, I mean, it's been the same way. I feel as though I've been the driving force of this card. I'm the one that told you guys, hey, this is never going to happen. Oscar doesn't have a date, a venue, tickets on sale, a promoter's license, and then all of a sudden he started answering for some of those things. So I guess I appreciate the fact that Oscar or his PR team or somebody listens to this show, but there is still some big red flags going on with this. And we'll see, we're starting to see these guys getting licensed. We're starting to see that the pay-per-view providers are there. We're starting to see that Chuck and Tito are getting a little bit more serious. We're starting to see some posters come out. I mean, I guess my overall opinion to you guys, if I had to pick right now, I would say, yes, it's going to happen. I would also share with you guys there is not going to be a Golden Boy MMA Part 2. It has been a confusing, we'll call it that, it's been a confusing promotion and a confusing proposition from the very beginning. And it's not really getting any clearer. Randy Couture came out, and he's got a pretty good relationship with both Chuck and Tito. I suppose that's easy to do when you kick both those guys' asses. They're probably both pretty nice to him. But he's got a good relationship with both of them. But I think he's working with Chuck. I mean, he might even be cornering Chuck. I know he's been in the training facility over at Unbreakable with Jay Glazer. I know he's with Chuck a lot. But he came out and said, I do have one concern about the fight, which is only that Chuck has not fought in 8 years. And I don't just mean you guys can go and look at his record and see he hasn't been in the ring in 8 years. Randy went a little bit further to say, even in the practice room. When Chuck left the sport of MMA, he largely left because he was taking big shots. I'm reminding you guys of that. These aren't Randy's words. But he was largely taking big shots, and he was having a hard time dealing with those shots. So when you retire like that, you You don't go in and spar. That's the whole reason you left the sport in the first place. You don't want to take any more shots. Well, that's exactly what Chuck did, but then the weeks turned into months, turned into years, and now we're the well better part of a decade, and he hasn't even done any sparring until just recently, when according to his own admittance, he needed some money and decided to jump in there one more time with Tito. So I think that was a fair comment by Randy. Randy also elaborated by saying, Chuck's fighting style was really time-based. He was fantastic with timing. Guys would be coming in, boom, he would explode and catch them, making the shot doubly as hard, right? You guys remember the Kevin Randleman fight with Chuck Liddell? Kevin's coming this way, Chuck's coming this way. You have a car wreck. And Chuck was really good at that. He was really good at some of those timing issues. And I agree with that with Randy. I never thought of Chuck's career like that until Randy pointed it out. But that is something that you lose with age. So as you start to break down the fight, I have the foggiest idea who's going to win between those guys. And I will tell you that's not a fight that any of us are going to study or break down for technique and new and what's coming up in MMA. I get it for what it is. It's a walkout between a guy with a mohawk and a guy with bleached hair that means something from our past. I get the whole thing. But that doesn't still mean that there isn't something special there. On some level, a reminiscence, if you will. An alma mater match, if you will, right? Where the guys return to school for a fundraiser. It doesn't still mean there's not something there. And I want to be positive about it. But I think the best that I could tell you right now is that I will sing a little bit of a different tune, that I at least think that the card is going to happen. But I'm not guaranteeing you that much. Let's stick around. As the weeks get closer, we will have to accept it either is or isn't. But there is still some things going on that are very suspicious about this alleged fight. These days, news travels lightning fast, which is great if you're a sports fan. Between status updates and breaking news notifications, you can always be up to the minute on every team of every game. While this is great for sports, it's the opposite when it comes to buying a car. You go online, you're going to get bombarded with numbers, invoice, list price, dealer price. It's hard to know and recognize a good price. Well, not anymore. Let me introduce you to True Price, only from TrueCar. It's the only price you need to know because it's exactly what you're going to pay for the car you want, and that includes fees and accessories. And how do you know that the true price is a great price? Because TrueCar shows you what other people paid for the same car you want. So you know how to recognize a good price, and your certified dealer knows this. So they set their true price competitively because they want to earn your business. So when you're ready to buy, new or used, visit TrueCar to enjoy a more confident car buying experience. Some features not available in all states. So Daniel Cormier came out. He actually made a very interesting point. He was talking about his light heavyweight title in conjunction with what if he gets knocked out by Derek Lewis? What if he ends up getting cleaned up there and loses the heavyweight strap? And what he was saying was, I'm not giving up that light heavyweight title because I might get knocked out by Derek Lewis. I don't think that I should have to do the company a favor on short notice, go out there and fight Lewis and lose both titles in the process. Well, that is kind of a compelling argument. I mean, that is kind of an interesting argument because they have alluded to and maybe even revealed to us that they're going to strip Daniel Cormier in time to make Jones and Gus a unified title bout. They have told us that. But when is that time? Right? If you say a guy's going to be stripped, and I think in all of our eyes, then he's stripped. But that's not officially how it works. There's actually like a moment where a guy loses his title. And Dana's even gone out sometimes. I mean, just recently, he did this in the Tyron fight, Tyron versus Till, and said, is it related to Colby Covington? He will lose the interim title as soon as the first punch is thrown. Or you guys remember Ali Aquina taking on Khabib. Conor will lose his championship as soon as the first punch is thrown. Well, okay, so when are you going to strip Cormier? Because he does make a perfectly fair point, which is if I'm going to step in to save the day at MSG, which is how this has been presented to me. I got this hand issue and I wasn't ready to fight, and I thought I wasn't up until next year, and it was supposed to be a guy named Brock Lesnar, and now it's a guy named Derek. If I'm going to do all of these different things, I'm not putting both belts up on the line. That's a fair argument. I mean, that's a different argument. I've been calling for Daniel to be stripped, or at least close to it for a little bit, only from the perspective that he's never going to return to 205 pounds. But returning to 205 pounds and losing your championship at 205 pounds are two totally different arguments. And if the argument is coming in, which is, listen, you can only go with one division at a time. You've got Derek Lewis coming up, and then we're planning to do this Brock thing with you down the road. So there's no plan for you back at 205 pounds. If that's the argument, poor Daniel does have the right to say, listen, just in case I catch a heater right down the middle from the Black Beast, I'm not dropping both straps in the same night. I don't know how that's going to play out. I don't know that that's even a situation that Daniel has to completely worry about. But I thought that his point was fair. I really did think that he made a fair point. All right, guys, I have owed. If you were listening last week, you know we had the lovely Eva Marie on, who has started her own show right here at Podcast One, the Natalie Eva Marie Show. She was in a movie called Inconceivable. That movie was on Netflix, and I told her I was going to watch it, and I was going to review it, and I am going to do both on Friday. So until then, stick around. I will tell you how her performance was. I will tell you how the movie was as a whole. And I will tell you anything else that you need to know under the sun. For that, I'm Chael Sonnen, and you, of course, are welcome.
Thanks for listening to You're Welcome with Chael Sonnen. Download new episodes every week at podcastone.com. That's podcastone.com.
Football season is here, and no one covers football like Podcast One Sportsnet. We've got you covered on a daily basis with Dan Patrick, Rich Eisen.
This might be just a walk in the park.
RJ Bell's Dream Preview, and Ross Tucker's Fantasy Feast podcast.
They're just creating more work for me at this point.
We also have Jim Harbaugh with Attack Each Day and Revenge of the Jocks with Martellus Bennett.
Football is the ultimate soap opera.
So download all of these shows and more each week on PodcastOneSports.com.
And now, a thought from Geico Motorcycle.
It took 15 minutes to purchase the gas station egg salad. Eat the gas station egg salad. And regret the gas station egg salad as you presented numbers to the board. To add insult to injury, you could have used those 15 egg salad minutes to switch your motorcycle insurance to Geico.
Uh-oh. Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on motorcycle insurance.
I'm Rita Foley with an AP News Minute. President Trump complains he's being blamed for the mail bombs addressed to his critics. Investigators reportedly believe some of those packages may have originated in Florida. The FBI's Bill Sweeney.
I'm not going to get into specifically where we think the packages came from. Some were obviously delivered or in the postal system. I'll leave it at that.
None of the bombs exploded. President Trump has a plan to lower prices for some prescription drugs. He says it would keep Americans from having to pay much more than those in other countries for the same medications.
We're taking aim at the global freeloading that forces American consumers to subsidize lower prices in foreign countries.
We're told the president will send hundreds of active-duty military troops to the border with Mexico. President Trump is vowing to stop thousands of immigrants who are walking toward the U.S. in a caravan. I'm Rita Foley.